Welcome to the Business of You podcast, the show dedicated to helping service entrepreneurs build a better brand to grow a bigger business. I'm your host, Michelle Griffin, and I'm here each week empowering you to put yourself out there, sharing actionable tips and inspiring stories so you can create your personal brand, grow your dream business, and build your future, all while making more income and more impact doing exactly what you love. I'm super excited you're here. Now let's get going with today's show. Welcome, Wendy. How are you today?
Hey, Michelle. I'm doing great. It's really good to talk to you.
I hope people could hear that intro because I was on mute. But anyway, welcome everybody again to the show.
Funny.
Yeah,
well, I heard it.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure. So welcome everybody to the show. I'm super excited to host and introduce you to my guest, Wendy Margolin. Welcome, Wendy.
Hello.
Well, Wendy, as I said in the intro, is a social media strategist, a writer, marketer, all the things, and a pretty awesome guitar player. I have to give you a shout out for that. I always pull up her stories on Instagram, and there she is playing guitar. I'm a little bit jealous. So she's multi-talented, right? Here we go today, giving us some good tips on stories. So Wendy, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why are you doing it?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. We've collaborated in the past, and it's always really fun talking to you. I do want to first make a caveat that I am not an awesome guitar player, although I aspire to be able to jam around a campfire. That is my goal. And I picked it up at 40, so you can too.
Awesome.
Okay, so my background is in writing. I bring writing to everything that I do, and it's really in stories. So I started in print journalism, and from there I moved into more of a marketing communications role where I was doing everything for a small nonprofit. And I remember in that role, so around 2008, I had lay leaders come to us because a nonprofit, you have lay leaders who tell you what to do in addition to your boss. And so I had them come to me and they're like, we got to be telling stories. The in thing is stories. And I'm like, the in thing is stories. That's my whole career. I got that. But the truth is that stories, they go back all the way to sitting around a campfire. You know, there's like studies about telling stories around a campfire. And if you had this dynamic storyteller, everybody pretty much survived. You sat around the fire together. So stories are in our blood. It's in our DNA. And I've been telling stories throughout my career. So first in journalism, then in that marketing role, and now really through social media and blogging and email marketing. Even my email marketing is very heavily story-based. So I'm excited to talk to you about that today.
Well, that's so important because, you know, we know storytelling's in, 2000 years ago, however long, for the end of time to the beginning of time, all the time, stories are so important. In fact, one of the things I always trip my family up, or my husband, so he'll listen, I'll say, hey, I have a story to tell you. Try that on somebody. If you just say those words, people just listen. It's so ingrained in us. How do we translate that attention, which we need so much in social media, especially on LinkedIn and all the social media platforms, translate that story into an awareness, engagement, and connection? So that's why you're here today, because you have 4 signature stories, frameworks, templates, whatever you want to call it, that you're going to share with us that's going to help us tell better stories, right?
Yeah.
All
That's
right.
the plan. I'm going to do my best.
You're going to do it awesome, because let me give you guys, Wendy was on our personal brand mastery clubhouse several months ago. And she did that. Is it too personal to share notes? And they were amazing. And I made her I said, I got to stop. I got to take these down. So I made a slider. In fact, I put it out there Monday. So you guys can go on my profile. That thing went off the charts. People love that, Wendy. And I do want to make a caveat. Those are not my tips. I said that as much as I can. I give all the credit to you. I was just the messenger there. So you obviously know what you're talking about with stories. So let's go for it, Wendy. What are the 4 stories we need to be telling?
Yeah. Okay. Good question. So I do want to just say, and this is not what the 4 stories are about, but what you said about grabbing the attention, that is a little bit of a different episode.
Okay.
Having that first line that really grabs attention, and then that last line that really, encourages engagement. So there is a format to doing this, but I want to get to the heart of like, what are even the stories you should be telling?
Okay.
And this applies to your personal social media marketing. It'll apply to if you're doing email, weekly email for your business, or personally just to your clients. I know people doing it in that format. So it really applies to everything. It can be blogs. So I'm going to jump in, if it's okay with you, to
Sure.
the way
Do
I
it.
divide up
Yeah.
stories. What kind of stories should you have in your repertoire? So the first thing I do want to just say, and this is kind of umbrella over all your stories, is that it's about you. It's your story, but it's not really about you. It's got to be universal. So, Michelle, you mentioned those questions to ask yourself about how personal to get. So we probably won't have time to get into that, but it doesn't have to be super personal for a story to work, for it to be something to share. But it is your story, but it's not really about you. It's about the lesson that you have to share that's going to be relevant to your audience. Okay, so I'm going to break this down into 4 types. It's pretty easy to remember.
Okay.
So the first is your why, your what stories. You see a pattern here, your how stories, and your for what purpose. Okay. It doesn't work to have that one.
That reminds me a little bit of journalism, right? The who, what, where.
Probably.
Yeah,
Sometimes
but
you
more
don't
story
even-
based, not just
Right.
the facts. Yeah.
Sometimes you don't even know where you come up with something. So maybe there's
No, I mean, I'm not discrediting, but I'm just saying that's a good reminder, core foundation, because you get trained in journalism school about that.
Yeah.
So every good story should have these components. So let's dig into those. I'm curious. I need to write better stories myself. I want to learn.
Okay. Well, I hope we'll have time. I'll give you some hints for how to think of your own stories from your own day-to-day life.
Okay.
All right. So your first one is your why. This is your big why. Like, what makes you get up in the morning to do this work? And now for some people, they're going to have a really big epiphany of why they do this work. And maybe that's something you're willing to share, and maybe it's not. So whether you have that big epiphany or whether you don't, or maybe you have it, you're not even so interested in sharing that deep personal story, you still have little why stories. So let me just give you an example. So I work with clinicians, so physicians, therapists, physical therapists, and I do a lot of telling their story. And it's one of the first questions I ask, like, why do you do this work? And most of the people I work with had an experience either really positive, where someone gave them excellent care at some point in their childhood. It typically goes back to childhood for these people. They saw like a loved one get not so great care, and they want to do better. So that's like a powerful why. You may not always want to share that why. It may be like a hard personal experience that drove you to do this. So it just depends on you. But you probably have a lot of little whys. Like maybe you started in a company. So for you, it might have been like corporate. For my clients, it might be that they were in a group practice and they just knew they could do it better.
Yep.
And like you had this moment where you just knew, like, I could do this better. So I have both those stories. I have a deep connection to wanting to make a significant impact in healthcare and getting the right information out there. Everyone should be deeply connected to their right primary care physician. And that person needs to be able to reach them through social media on top of the million things they need to do. So I have that deep story related to my past and my family, but I also have these other stories of like being in my day-to-day job and like they wanted to bring in another consultant to my job. I'd already had this guy before. It was me like the second round of the same guy. And I was like, I end up telling the consultant things because I'm in the weeds doing all the work and I've just been there too long. Like it's time to move on.
It's
so
time.
That would be like my little why. It's not quite as person. So we've all got these. So the questions to ask yourself for your why story is what got you started? What gets you up in the morning every day to do this work?
I love that. That's the emotional connection. And if you can tell that story as much as you can without that being painful, we don't want it to be painful for us. But when I do my branding work with clients, our personal brand story is our why. And that's why I encourage, because people can relate. You're drawing in the people who want to do business with you, can relate to you, and then you can help. So stories have that emotional connection. So start with the why. Try to go for the big one, if not the little one, or a mixture, But you're so right. I always tell my clients, they usually have started because of an injustice, on something wrong. I was a story brand certified guide, and that was something big. They say, what is the injustice and the wrong? And that's usually the story of your why and why you want to do business the way you do. So love that. Always start with the why. Is that what I'm hearing? Start
Yeah,
first with the
well, that
why.
is your
Okay.
first big story. And that
Okay.
you're gonna, like you mentioned, you're gonna put that in your bio.
Yeah.
It's gonna be on your website. And you're gonna put it, there's these, we do this a lot on Instagram, not so much on LinkedIn, but you get a lot of followers and you'll be like, let me just introduce myself.
Yeah.
And they're fun posts. You usually put a fun photo, you put fun facts, you ask them for fun facts, but that little why story should be in there. So you use the story often.
It's a cornerstone. And you know what? You're so right about that Instagram thing. I absolutely love that because you get new followers, connections. Why can't we start a thing
We
on
could.
LinkedIn?
Let's do
Let's
it.
do it. Find a hashtag and just start doing that. I know there was like
Totally.
a thing going right now with polls, like find the things that are true or false. But if you don't know someone to begin with, you can't even really answer those questions. So how often would you recommend? Because you're heavily into Instagram. I do want to recommend you guys follow Wendy because she has amazing stories and reels if you want to learn from that. How often would you recommend that introduction post?
Yeah, good question. It would depend really on how fast your channel, your followers are growing.
That's true. Okay.
So if you're growing pretty slowly, you don't have to keep introducing yourself.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
But if you're growing quickly, I would. And you can always make it different. Use a different photo, use some different fun facts,
True.
but the why story is in there. So
Yeah.
you'd be surprised. I mean, you wouldn't be surprised because you can really repeat yourself a lot in content, and you really should because you think that people are listening to you, and then sometimes you reach out to them in the direct messages, and you're like, "Good luck with such and such. Let me know if you want me to need tips on that." And they're like, "Oh, that's what you do?" You're
Yeah.
like, "Yes, I'm like that."
Well, we have to remember, guys, we have to remember just because we put content out daily or frequently, not everyone is seeing it. You get, the algorithm trains our people to, pop up, but there's so many people who don't see it. So finding a way to keep reintroducing those content cornerstone theme without exactly repeating it is so smart. So it just forms a connection. So I absolutely love the why. And I want to caution Wendy, we don't need the why story that needs to be 10 chapters long. Like the art and science is to make it short, and that's harder. But if you can take that story, keep narrowing it, crafting it down until you have a couple sentences, in the short form bio. And I've even seen people do it really well on their LinkedIn about summaries. What are your thoughts on there?
Yeah, absolutely. Same sort of thing. So,
Okay.
start with the website one. Every channel has its nuances, a different LinkedIn live session.
Yes.
But yeah, so a version of that story is in all those places.
Okay. Very good. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, the why story I am excited about. I'm going to go craft mine better. You taught me so much already. Well, no, I need to tell my story better. I've told it other places, but I need to put it in one place. So I appreciate that. And now the next one. What is our next story?
I do think just to hit on what you just said, you do get better at telling these stories as you tell them.
Yes.
So don't wait for it to be perfect. Start telling it, and that telling it will get much stronger.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay, so then I want to make sure we get through all. So I'll try to go a little faster.
Okay.
So the what story, these are all the things about what you bring to your work that's uniquely you. Now, before you get uncomfortable, if you don't want to share things about your personal life, because not everybody's like, whoa, I have my professional life and I have my personal life. Well, first of all, we all see we're pretty mixed. We're both zooming in here from our homes.
Yep.
So there's no longer that division, but still not everybody wants to be, especially my clients. Many of them are very private. So what doesn't have to be super personal? It's stories about maybe gardening, it's hobbies, it's things that you do, running, walking your dog, things that just make you really relatable. So it depends on the work you do, but so for my clients, especially if you're like a therapist, even a pediatrician, people are coming to you for you. They want to like you. So if you're like a coach, if you have any business that's built off of not just your expertise, but also the personality and your approach and just what it's like to have to talk to you for an hour. If that's a heavy part of your job, then having people connect to you and like see you as a person with certain interests that they have in common is a good thing. Makes you a person.
I definitely want to say that in the healthcare world, because how do I put this tactfully? Healthcare is a very personal, obviously, very service-based personal, but to know, let's just put it this way, to find a healthcare provider that I can identify with in social media and I like them. I want to, the end of the day, I personally want to go a healthcare provider. Of course, they're talented, expert, and all that, but they have a great bedside manner. To
Mhm.
me, that means everything. I've gone through my share that have not even looked up from their laptop. So knowing that you have a personality or personable, that's been kind of in between
Yeah,
personal and stuff, personable. That speaks volumes because people are going to search you out. I mean, there's some doctors in my town that have 6-month wait lists because they
yeah.
just have incredible bedside manners. And you know what that means, just
Mhm.
personalities, you know?
Yeah,
So you really push your healthcare, and it could be any industry, push yourself out on social media, even if you're private, right? Find a personal side to you that you can share that you feel
absolutely. You
comfortable.
can, yeah, you can keep your personal life private, but still share things that may give you common interest. I'll just give you an example from before the social media days, back in the early aughts, the early 2000s. So I remember taking one of my kids to a therapist, and we always went in after dinner, and she had this just like very sort of granola vibe, which you can tell I sort of have going on here. And we just felt really comfortable in her space. And then also, like, she would ask about what we had at dinner, and like we had this weird spice from Whole Foods, and like she knew the spice. We would chat and relate about it, and
Yeah.
we felt more comfortable opening up to this person because we have things in common. So knowing that she uses garam masala on her dinner also is not extremely personal, but so when you literally just sprinkle these stories
Sprinkle.
in
Yes. Love that.
is the way that you do this. So you think of this as like the sprinkles on your ice cream, the lemon
Love it.
zest
A
on
little
your
bit of
lemon butter,
seasoning,
whatever.
sprinkles, just a seasoning of it, a little
Yeah,
taste of
totally.
zest of
Season
it.
is in everywhere, and
I love it.
people start to connect you. So,
Mhm,
um, questions for that are like, what about me attracts others to me, and what makes me relatable? And you might have to
mhm.
ask somebody if you
Yeah.
struggle with that, but most likely,
Okay, well, that's really good. Just sprinkle it a little
yeah.
bit. We don't need a lot. Okay, very
Yeah,
good.
those are really good for social media. Okay, your how stories. This is the stories about how you do this work.
Okay.
So all the things that set you apart from everybody else. Maybe you have a different system. Maybe you have different hours. Like
Mhm,
you work with people who can't talk to you in the day during business hours, so you have evening hours. That would
mhm.
be part of your how. And instead of just announcing you have business hours, you would like tell the story about how you were also a parent and you couldn't get things done at work and whatever. You have stories about
Yep.
how you came to an understanding that you needed to do this work differently. So those
Mhm.
are
That's what I call different positioning or differentiation and telling
okay.
a really good story with that. And there's always a
Totally.
way to make you different. Like I always tell my clients, there are other people who do what you do, you know, thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, whatever, but there's no one like you. So you find your differentiation and and you wrap it with a story.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
that's the way to do it. Sprinkle it with a story, as you say.
Yeah,
So yeah.
instead of just like letting people know you have different hours, or this, we're talking about personal stories, but let's say you're a company. So I have a client who just told me today that they pay tuition. We're doing like some back to school posts. They pay tuition for full time employees. So you can announce that, and you should on social media and other places. But you can also tell a story about one of your employees who's going back to school, and you show her back to school photo, and you share the story of why she's going back to school, and you make sure it's clear that everyone knows that you're footing the bill.
Yes.
So then it's memorable, and people read it and they remember.
That emotional connection. You're not promoting yourself indirectly by telling a
Hmm.
story.
Hmm.
So, okay. So
Yeah,
we have the why, the what, the
yeah.
how.
So the
Okay.
question would be, what's a way that I do things differently from everyone else? And
Okay.
again, you're just gonna sprinkle these through your marketing.
Love it. Okay.
Okay, and then the for what purpose, these are the stories that explain what is the vision of where I'm going, what is it all for, where do I get people to. So these
Okay.
are like the results, and obviously sometimes you can share the name, sometimes you can't. And there's lots of ways to do that, but you could still just tell a story broadly about where you want to get people to, or a result. Maybe a lot of times people are supporting people in something they had to do themselves first.
Yes.
So, the result could be how you got there and you're helping others do the same. So those are stories where you would ask yourself, like, what's an example of how I help, and the
Okay.
vision of where my clients end
Okay.
up.
The transformation stories is what I'm hearing, right?
Exactly.
Which is the epitome of what a real good story is. It's the character, the conflict resolution, transformation. So those are really interesting. So how would you structure those? Tell us how to do that.
Good question. Okay, so I can talk about a framework for telling the story, and then maybe I can just give a couple. I want to make sure before we get off that I give some ideas of how do you come up with these stories?
Yeah, let's do that too.
All right, so the framework for telling a story, and this works on every piece of content. So a video, an email, your social content, and a blog for sure. So you got to open with something to draw your reader or listener in. So on social media, you've really just got that one little line, but you have some more room in other spaces, especially email. I love email because you can really, in that old journalism way, like draw people in with the story and not worry about the SEO keyword in the top line or whatever. You just pull their interest in. So on email, you really have a lot of room to open with something that's going to draw your reader or your listener in. Okay. And then next, you're going to share the actual story. So tell the story. And the more you tell it, the better you'll get at it. Keep it short. You don't need a million details. Mm-hmm. And then this is the key point, because remember we started by saying that it's your story, but it's not about you.
Yep.
Yeah. So the key point is that you tie your story to a message.
Yes.
So for example, a story could be that it's the story you shared about a struggle, and then the message is that you're not alone and I can help you with this, whatever it is. Or it might be that you're tying it to an objection or a stumbling block that a lot of people that you work with tend to have. So you always got to tie it back to them, because it's really about them and how you can help them solve the problem they have. And then you want to end with a call to action. So you're not going to say a really sensitive story and be like, leave me an emoji if this happened to you. Like, So
in context. Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's something that is sensitive, you could be like, DM me, direct message me.
Yes, that's a big one.
Yeah.
So they can be
personal. Something like that. You can say double tap to like it. If you talked about a story like that, for what purpose, where it really focused on the result you can achieve. So then the call to action might be that you want them to go get some sort of like freebie checklist.
Yeah.
Discovery call or whatever.
But don't leave them hanging. Invite them into the conversation and the transformation, So it's a great message. And you and I are so alike, because I always say your story, your about thing, I always say it's about your brand. Your brand is about you, but it's not for you. It's about how you show up to help others, be an authority and a brand of impact and transformation to help people. So I absolutely love these stories. So what were you going to tell us about some ideas on how to get these stories? Okay. We need that for sure.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So this is, and some of these will apply to even a group business where it's not just one person. So in that case, you'd want to ask about the business as a group, but mostly these are questions to ask yourself. Okay. As a leader of your business, or maybe the sole proprietor. Okay, so I have some questions, and I also have an exercise. So the exercise, and this really resonates with me, is in order to build a story bank, which is that's not my term. I don't remember where I got it from, but a story bank, a whole bunch of stories. So you want to think about your life in 5 or 10 year increments.
Okay.
Depending on your age. And so 5 or 10 year increments, and literally just brainstorm in a journal or a doc of every single thing you can remember. It sounds crazy, but literally every single memory that you can remember, write it down. And then from there, think about, is there a lesson that you can draw from that story? So I'll just give you an example. Like, one of my first memories is sitting down in my basement at my little kid table and trying to write my name. Like, I thought if you just scribbled enough, it would eventually be your name. And I remember like making the E like a comb. So I would like run up with different versions of scribbles with this E that looked like a comb every time and be like, is this it? So I've used that story in the context of talking about like my pursuit of writing and always having to make drafts and starting
Yeah.
out with, you start in the beginning, you don't really know what you're doing. You do really terrible work. Anne Lamott uses a different word. If you've read her book Bird by Bird, she uses the swear word for that. But she makes but it's that you sit down and do really terrible work and then eventually you actually get something good. So that's just one example of how you could take some distant memory and tie it to a story.
But that's a story. So people are going to listen because it's not just blah, boring copy. It's like, oh, I can, when you said that, just you saying that, I can picture little 3-year-old Wendy or whatever you were in your basement on your little kitty table with some crayons in hand. I mean, that's the beauty of story. My brain immediately pictured and visualized that. So, when you're writing, getting very visual specific, and that memory helps us form that. So I love that,
Right.
Wendy. So
Yeah.
so you can tie these random memories to a business point or about your business or what you do. Okay.
Right.
Love that.
So that
Okay.
would be that first exercise.
Okay.
And then another exercise are just a bunch of questions, and we only have a few minutes, so maybe I'll paste them into the comments when we
Yeah,
get
definitely come back and feel free to do it. This has been one of the most jam-packed,
off.
action-oriented episodes we've had. I'm just taking it all in myself.
Okay, I hope people aren't running away screaming. Like,
No, this is and a lot of them come back on the replay as most LinkedIn lives, but trust me. And then I do great things with it and recap. So don't worry, this isn't it. This is just the beginning of all this greatness that's getting out there. A few more things, and then I want to get your 3 recaps and then your personal mantra to help us write better stories. So did you have a few more frameworks? You said let's do the journal, memory, documentation.
Just the journal memory, and then I have some question prompts. But
okay, yeah, tell us those real quick. It's fine if we run a little over because you're giving so much value. Yeah.
Good?
Yeah,
So
of
was
course.
there a moment when everything changed, right?
Mm.
And then you can connect that to how you can change something for your audience.
Okay.
So that could be a story about like when I started playing guitar, when I started like riding a cargo bike. It doesn't have to be this
Massive thing.
Okay, what was some important lessons you learned, and when was the moment you learned it? And then you connect that to how you help your audience learn or practice.
Okay. Okay. Those are good. Yep.
What was something important you accomplished, and what did it take to do it? So then you're going to connect that to how you help your audience get there.
Okay.
Those are just 3 examples.
I love those. And we'll try to remember to put those in the comments. And then one of the things what I find, and myself included, when we try to write the answer to this, my brain wants to edit as I write. So therefore never anything gets out. So what I'll do is I encourage my clients when I'm helping them do content or myself, do a talk to text on that. Read that question and just verbally dump it, because your conversation, your natural language will just flow out and you go back and edit it. So that's one tip I want to add to that, because these are brilliant questions to get my brain thinking. You've already got me thinking, Wendy, all these good stories. So thank you for that. So let's go back and add those questions later. So make sure no one misses it. But as we always do in this show, and it's so important because everyone has different takes. What are your 3 takeaways as overall about telling better stories for your company or personal brands?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. I love this. So I think the most important thing is that even though it's your story, it's not about you. Every piece of content you ever write, even your bio, is about your audience.
Okay.
So that takes practice.
That's brilliant. Yep.
I guess would be my second point would be that just do it. It's cliche because it's Nike, but just get started.
Yep.
I see a lot of people try to just keep honing a skill, making something stronger, not feeling good enough, and then never getting started. And really the only way to move forward is just to have forward motion.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Put yourself out there, as I say. You can't get action and clarity until you take action.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
You learn by you become a better storyteller by telling these stories.
Yep. I love that. All right. Well, what's number 3? Because number 1 and 2 were brilliant.
I don't know if I have a third
We
brilliant
might give
one.
you a
I
hall
don't know
pass
what
then because you've
source
dropped
of
so
brilliant.
much value. Okay, that's fine. We'll give you a hall
I'm
pass
gonna
today.
stop it too while I'm
Okay.
ahead instead of making
No,
fun
that's fine. I mean, your brain is giving us so much goodness today. I appreciate that.
of
All right. Well, can you do this? Every guest gives us their personal or professional mantra to help us put ourselves out there, tell better stories, build our brands. What would you recommend?
Yeah, okay. Well, I touched on this and this question's easy. It's done is better than perfect.
Mm, true.
That's a really important thing to learn when you're creating social media.
Yes.
Done is better than perfect. I started in print journalism where like if you met and we messed up. If you mess up, like it's out in the world. So online communication is such a relief. You almost always can edit it, but
Yes.
just do it. Get the thing done and then make it better once it's out there.
Well, thank you, Wendy.
Yeah.
Such brilliant stuff. I can't wait to go back and listen, take notes, all the good things. I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, and where can everyone find you and connect with you to learn more?
All right. Thanks for having me. Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn. Here we are. And I am also on Instagram at wendy.margolin. I'm on Facebook at Sparker Marketing without an E. And I have lots of goodies and freebies and things to help you all continue to grow in your marketing. So I would check me out and let me know what kind of resources you need and I can help you.
Yeah, Wendy is amazing. So if you want to learn more about Instagram Reels and stories in general on Instagram, follow Wendy and you'll probably see her playing guitar a lot too. It's awesome. Well, Wendy, thank you again. I want to invite you all to join me next week. It's going to be very helpful. So everybody, thank you again. It's been a pleasure. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for tuning in today. You know, we definitely need more impactful entrepreneurs like you out there. So if you'd like to learn more about how I can help you build your personal brand to grow your business, please check out yourbrandyourbusiness.com. And until next time, you have a brand to build, a message to share, and people to impact. Now go put yourself out there and watch the business of you grow.